10-year-old Rebecca Baptiste died a death no child should ever know. Alone, abused, and broken. Found on a remote Arizona highway, her body bore the horrifying signs of torture, bruises, starvation, and unimaginable cruelty. Her toenails had been torn off, her eyes blackened, her tiny frame ravaged. Despite desperate calls from her school, no help came in time. Now her father and his girlfriend face murder charges, and tonight our first look at the evidence against these two accused child abusers and the two new shocking charges they are facing. But first, in July 2014, Florida State law professor Dan Markell was murdered in his Tallahassee driveway, shot execution style in the middle of a bitter custody battle following his divorce from Wendy Adelson. Wendy's mother, Donna Adelson, the matriarch of a powerful South Florida family, became the architect of a deadly conspiracy. Emails and recordings revealed Donna's obsession with relocating Wendy and her two young sons to Miami. The only obstacle in the way was Dan Markell. She enlisted her son, Charlie Adelson, who recruited intermediary and lover Catherine McBanoa to hire hitmen. Now, over a decade later, Donna Adelson, age 75, has finally been convicted of this awful crime. And now, for the first time, we are hearing from the jury foreperson. What insight does she reveal about the trial and the evidence against Wendy, who has never been charged? I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here at Closing Arguments. I am back in town, back from CrimeCon. Great to run into so many viewers and followers out there. And we shared together in that moment the verdict of Donna Adelson. And that was one of the really buzz stories at this conference of true crime enthusiasts from all over the country and all over the world. A lot of people are talking about Donna Adelson and the verdict. And I want to start there, but I want to start with another big case and another trial that we've covered, Alec Murdaugh. And what was interesting there, in that case, you had a jury issue, right? And this is really what he's leaning on for his appeal. And it was the court clerk who communicated with the jury, and Alec Murdaugh believes that was improper and the jury was influenced. So it wasn't necessarily the jury being accused of doing anything wrong, but the jury being part of the appeal of this murder conviction, and the jury having been potentially, at least according to him, influenced by the court clerk, Becky Hill. So things that happen with the jury you have to take very, very seriously. And you know, when they deliberate, no one's allowed in there, but if someone is communicating with them, it could be a problem. In the Karen Reed trial, another big one that we covered, there was a jury issue in the first case, because after speaking with the jury afterwards, between the two trials, they said, the ones that spoke said, we reached a verdict. At least a partial verdict in that case, but didn't fill out the paperwork, didn't know exactly what to do. And as a result, Karen Reed was tried twice for the same crime. And that was a jury issue that was not necessarily resolved in the way that the defense wanted in that case either, but it was a big deal. But at this point, moot, because Karen Reed was found not guilty in the second trial. Now, the thing about jurors, once their service is done, they are allowed to speak. Many times, we at Court TV will speak with them afterwards. I've done cases where after the verdict, the jury comes back into the courtroom and does an interview, the ones that want to. It's not unusual. It's not foreign to the system. Now, different states and jurisdictions have rules and limitations on how jurors can be contacted and what information they have. And sometimes in some jurisdictions, the judge will instruct the jury on, hey, you know, members of the media want to speak to you. If you want to speak, you can come out. You're not obligated to. So they're not obligated to speak or not speak, but they are permitted. It is their constitutional right. It's like freedom of expression, freedom to speak once their service is over. And it looks like this is happening in the Donna Adelson verdict. We've got our first TikTok juror. Yeah, You knew it was going to happen. Social media now has really put something else into the mix here. And it also happened with Karen Reed's second trial. One of the jurors was very active on social media. So you can, and that's the way people communicate now. And from their perspective, they get to control their message. They don't have to rely on us to track them down and put them out there. They can do it on their own if they so choose. And the jury foreperson in this verdict has done that. So let's start there because we're going to get some insight. Now, the jury foreperson posted the video I'm going to show you on her TikTok account, which is called Lacey with AJ, just hours after handing down the verdict in the Donna Adelson case. So this is all, relatively close to the time of the verdict. It's just a few hours later. Take a look.
Donna Adelson was found guilty on all 3 charges for killing her ex-son-in-law. I'm here to say that I was on the jury and I got to be the foreperson. If you have questions, let me know because I can finally talk.
She can finally talk. And that's good. And it's good that she knows, and it's very clear that she had to wait until that moment, but now she can talk. And she wants to control that conversation, I guess, to a certain extent by doing it on her own TikTok account. Let's bring in our think tank and see what they have to say about all this. Criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Al Wunsch III, criminal defense attorney Darnell Crosland, and family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. Great to have everyone here on this Monday. Al, I'll start with you. We've got our first TikTok juror. Do you have any concerns about this?
Well, first, Vin, can I be serious for a second? Okay, because I hobnob with a lot of celebrities. I live near a lot of celebrities. I mean, Darnell probably represents their landscapers or pool boys or nail clippers or the guy who butters their bagels. But I'm with the celebrities. And when I'm with them and they're asked, can I get an autograph? Can I get a picture? They usually say things like, I can't, I won't, I'm sorry. But not you, Vin. Not you. At CrimeCon, you spent any wish was granted to the fans of this show, and it was very touching. You would be there with them, talking to them, taking a picture with them, signing autographs, whatever needed to be done. And you know why, Vin?
Why?
Because there's no I in Vinny.
Oh,
you're there for the people.
There's an I and an E. It's not a Y, and you did that on purpose. He said he's going to be serious, and then he's busting my chops once again.
No. I'm not busting at all. I want to just tell you that because Darnell and Jen weren't there, but this,
now he's rubbing it in.
You go out there with the fans. You and I would be walking the hallway. We would be, fans would be coming up. They wanted to meet us. They wanted to have pictures taken and everything else. You were kind enough to take the picture, and I was kind enough to sit with them and take a picture. I was kind enough to hold their stuff and use their camera to get your picture.
Yeah, exactly.
So I felt very good.
All right, where were we? Your thoughts about our first TikTok juror? Our first TikTok juror.
She annoyed the heck out of me. By the time I was done watching her, I had such a headache there was no tomorrow. I have never seen a person speak quicker in my life.
I think she sped up the video. I think she sped up the video.
Believe me, something was on speed. That's for darn sure. Because she was just rambling like there was no. They probably made her the foreman just so they could keep her quiet. So
Darnell,
I'm interested. I'm interested in the fact that she's giving some comments and some insight on the thing. I think that's actually very nice, especially in a state like New Jersey where we can't ever talk to jurors.
Darnell, what are your thoughts about a juror coming out on TikTok and controlling their own message?
Well, first, if this was court, you would be judge, and I'd be saying, Judge, can I get an instruction to the witness to answer the question? But it's probably too late for that now. But in terms of this juror, and she waited her time, she followed the rules, and I support it because a lot of times I sit outside the courthouse waiting to talk to jurors to see what their response were. The judges always say that, they want to be fair. They're so pro-prosecution. Here in Connecticut, they go back in the chambers, in the jury room, and they say, we're going to come back and talk to you. They talk to them, but they never want to make it easy for the defense to get a chance to get a little talking in. So you got to stalk them outside. They tell them stuff like, you don't have to talk to Darnell if you don't want to. They do all this thing to discourage engagement. And so now that we have social media, we level the playing field where they go out and engage us, and I can join in the conversation, and we can all learn, see what went in their minds and come into a decision. So I support it because I don't have to wait out in the cold, trying to get a answer to some questions.
Jennifer Brandt, back in the old days, there's a big trial, there's a jury, you wait for the book to come out and you learn a little bit more. Here, it's like, an hour and change, and we're getting the rundown on TikTok. Do you have any concerns, or do you think it's enlightening, it's good for the system?
I think it's great for the system, and I think it's really great for young people to see someone who's gone through jury service, which is always a bit daunting to people, and they're afraid. And here's someone who's proud to talk about it, who said how interesting it was and how much she learned about the legal process. And she appears to be pretty young, and I think it's great for other young people to say, hey, that might be a fun thing, and then maybe I can go on TikTok and talk about it, because people are always looking for content. So I think it's a good thing. I am a little disappointed, though, that Darnell and I weren't invited to CrimeCon, and Al was.
Thank you, Jay.
Well, 2026, it'll be in Vegas, so let's go. Let's go. Now, the foreperson posted another video where she talked about the deliberations, how quick they were. Again, this is her account, Lacey with AJ.
Overall, it took us about just over 3 hours to deliberate and reach our final verdict, right? But within the first hour, hour and a half, I want to say, everyone was agreeing that she is guilty. We had two people who said they thought she was guilty. They're like, but I'm kind of confused on this one thing, this like point 2 on count 2. And we went over things point by point, okay?
So this was very quick. She said within an hour, Al, they all agreed. They just had to clarify something on the second count. But this jury, and she's all, look at Donna, she's all surprised. They weren't surprised, it was within an hour. Are you surprised that it was that fast, that they just agreed? Within an hour.
Yeah, I didn't think there was any, this was one of those jury verdicts that you could have phoned in, basically. I mean, there was no way that they were going to come back not guilty on this. With the amount of evidence, the testimony that had been there, it demonstrates that not only did they listen to the testimony, for the most part, they understood it. They understood the instructions, and they knew what to do. They came in there. Now, it's interesting because there is a part where you start saying to yourself, well, did they already pre-decide this before they even started deliberating? And that gets me a little nervous. But the foreperson does explain that wasn't, at least in her case, that wasn't the situation at all. That once they got in there, though, and they looked at everything with the instructions, they, absolutely uncategorically believed that she was guilty on all counts.
All right, and that brings me to a question here, Darnell. Like an hour, these folks are agreed that, yes, she's guilty of murder. She was orchestrating this murder for hire. Why are we sitting here 11 years later waiting for this, for a case that's so overwhelming for this jury?
It was funny, that was a question that was asked today by a court reporter from WTNH. I was in the courthouse in New Haven on a double homicide, an arraignment today. And we got there at 10 o'clock, 10:30, and it was almost 12 o'clock before the judge came out. So one of the court reporters said to me, Darnell, what's happening here? Why does the judges have all this, they're the pool, as they call it. We're the pool. We have all this other, these media outlets here, and we're waiting for 2-3 hours. What's happening here? And I said, you know what? That's a great question, Jeff, because that happens in the criminal justice system all too often, that you wait for so long because of the process, and justice delayed, they say, is justice denied. So many people are arguing that the justice has been denied for a very long time. And unless you file a speedy trial, but even if you file a speedy trial.
I'm looking at it from the other side, though, Darnell. I'm looking at it from the side like, hey, why did it take 11 years to prosecute and convict Donna Adelson? I mean, at the end of the day, Jennifer, at the end of the day, this jury got it very quickly. This wasn't a tough one for them. They weren't hemming and hawing. Like Al said, it was overwhelming.
I know, but I don't think that, I mean, I was sort of surprised. And I think a lot of people that were talking about the trial were surprised. I don't think everyone thought it was such a slam dunk, especially on the first-degree murder charge. I mean, there was a lot of evidence here, but I think in terms of timing, it took a lot of time, including Charlie's trial and getting through all this evidence to draw, you know, all the lines and connect all the dots. To Donna Adelson. And I don't think it was as certain as Al wanted to say it is. I mean, I think people were questioning whether or not she would be found guilty, especially on all counts. She was certainly shocked.
Oh, she was not expecting that. She thought she was going to go home. She thought she was going home, or maybe Vietnam. Let's take a listen to one more here, because here the foreperson on her account, Lacey with AJ on TikTok, talks about the age factor, because as we're all looking at her, she looks very, very young.
A lot of people seemed really focused on my age. We had a super balanced jury, like a big age range. I was not the youngest one on the jury. And the only time we were provided lunch was the last day. So before, you know, because even though we weren't deliberating just yet, we weren't able to leave the jury room for lunch. So they ordered us some Marco's pizza. We didn't get dinner. They came in the bailiffs came in probably 30 minutes before we reached our final verdict, asking if we would want dinner, but also explaining that it would take probably an hour to get there. And we're just like, no, like, that's okay. You don't need to waste money to feed us when it's not going to be necessary.
How about that little revelation? Al, many times the jury will want that final meal just to kind of like, okay, we'll get the meal and then we'll deliver the verdict afterwards. They refused. They said, well, no, we're almost there. No need to order dinner.
Yeah. Right. But look, you know, you talk about the fact it took 11 years to put this whole thing through. I think the prosecution did a masterful job on this. And even the way they've set this trial up, they've put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and that took time. And that's why I think that when you put a product like that, they put a finished piece in front of this jury. And that's why it was as quick as it was. And that's why they didn't need dinner. They were, they were perfectly satiated with the evidence that they were fed. And they came up with the verdict. So they were no longer hungry, Vin. They didn't need a meal.
When we come back.
I would have took that dinner, though.
What's that, Jardel?
I would have took that dinner.
See, there we go. There we go. All right, when we come back, the jury's foreperson talks about Wendy Adelson. What does she think about Wendy Adelson? Plus, coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, the Mother's Day murder of mother of two Suzanne Morphew. Why did her husband Barry move out of town and start a new secret life? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
She kisses Joy and says, "Sorry, I love you."
Was this an accident or murder?
And that is where the truth begins to get twisted.
The Kiss and Kill Murder Trial. Trial coverage weekday mornings 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Is there any way that you would think
somebody tried to kill my ex-husband? They should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Regardless of who it is.
I mean, it would be different if I thought it were my brother, but I don't think it was my family.
Family had your ex-husband killed to try to help you, didn't they?
No, that's completely untrue.
And you testified on direct that anybody in your family that had anything to do with it should be held responsible. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And that includes you, doesn't it?
Anyone who's responsible.
Wendy Adelson, I'm telling you, out of CrimeCon, that was the question, right? After the verdict came in, it was like, well, what about Wendy? What about Wendy? Everyone coming up to me, what do you think? Is Wendy next? Is Wendy next? And that's, the next logical place in this case, right? Is if you've got Harvey, you've got Wendy out there, but Wendy is the obvious one. She is the beneficiary of all of this, winning this custody battle after the execution, getting to raise her children wherever she wanted to, and now apparently in Texas with those children. So The jury foreperson in Donna Adel's trial went on TikTok answering questions about the case, and one of her followers asked her if she thought Wendy Adelson was involved in Dan Markel's death. Now remember, she's listened to all this evidence, right? So a lot of the evidence against Donna was the same evidence against Charlie and could, I guess, potentially be the evidence against Wendy, but she wasn't on trial here. Here was part of her response to that question.
I do think that she will be next. I just don't know to what extent. I don't know what she will be indicted on, but she was 100% involved. She also played dumb very well. I feel like that's when we saw the acting that Miss Donna referred to previously. After we were released from our service, walking back, being escorted by the bailiffs to the where we parked and stuff, it was very interesting to hear everyone's opinions, because at that point in time we were allowed to talk about it because we were dismissed from the jury, whatever. Everyone agrees. She's probably gonna be next.
Wow, 100% involved. That means, if Wendy was on trial there, she would have been convicted. 100% is beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's bring back our think tank. Still with us, Al Wunschler, Darnell Crossland, Jennifer Brandt. Darnell, how about that? This was the case of Donna, and the jury foreperson was 100% convinced that Wendy was a part of it.
Well, tuck me in, Vinny, because that's what the question boils down to. In our society, it always boils down to, if you convict a person, now we can sleep at night. If you convict two people, maybe we can sleep at night. So if we're tucked in, we're all set. But this juror is saying if she's put on trial, she'll be found guilty. The question is whether the prosecution, after taking so long to bring Donna Adelson, whether they're going to even pick up a broom and try to sweep up the rest of this mess.
Jennifer Brandt, the next time the grand jury's in session down in Tallahassee, do you think the prosecutors bring this case against Wendy?
I just think they may, Vinny, because, they've got, 5 people already on this murder, and she's the one that's sort of out there. And this juror seemed to, after hearing everything, thought definitely she was involved. They heard her testify. So I'm sort of thinking, to make it sort of a clean sweep, they do need to bring in Wendy. Otherwise, she's always going to be out there, and people will be questioning, why weren't charges brought against her as well?
Al, I want to play for you a recording from 2015, because back in 2015, joining the Writing Class Radio podcast, where Wendy Adelson shared her experience dealing with the death of Dan Markel, her ex-husband. That podcast has recently resurfaced, and here's some of what, again, this is Wendy Adelson talking about Dan in 2015, 1 year after the murder.
10 months ago, someone killed the father of my children. First we got divorced, and then he got murdered. In casual conversations, I don't know whether to call him my ex-late spouse or my late ex-spouse, except that late ex-spouse sounds like latex spouse. Last July, someone, and we still don't know who, shot my ex-husband point blank in the back of the head as he pulled into our garage after driving our then 3- and 4-year-old sons to preschool.
Al, what do you think of that? That's 2015.
I think, why would you be doing this? Why would you be putting that out there? And it's so cold-blooded. The whole thing about my late ex-spouse or my ex-late spouse or my latex spouse is just so disrespectful to the father of her kids, who has been brutally murdered and executed. And to be bringing it up as a story, it's just ridiculous. Listening to this, how anybody could think that she didn't have something to do with it after that is going to be beyond me. There's a slogan for the restaurant, Wendy's, and the slogan is, "We got you." And I think right after I heard that, we got you.
Darnell, do you think we're, She has spoken a lot about this. Now, none of the testimony in any of the trials can be used against her, but a statement like that on a podcast could potentially be. Things that she said in her police interview, things that she may have said at cocktail parties and dinner parties about the murder of her ex. It seems like all that is open game here. What are your thoughts about the way she has acted, the way she has reacted to the murder of the father of her children?
Well, the first thing I felt was it reminds me of a case that I'm dealing with now. A young man killed his mother here in Connecticut, and there was $1 million policy that was left for him, and he can't collect it now. So we're in probate court because this thing called a Slayer statute, which means that you can't benefit from something like this if you brought about the death. Well, it sounds like when you listen to her podcast thing there, she's totally benefiting from this death. And so analogous to the Slayer statute, someone needs to step up and say, you know, we need to indict this woman because she's out there bragging about this, speaking so flippantly about this, and she's benefiting from the death of this man, even though her mom just got convicted. She's, you know, like Al said, my latex husband, it sounds like she has no remorse at all. And she said he got shot in the head, and she's just laughing about it. So I think she shouldn't be able to benefit from his death when it's clear that she had something to do with it. And so I think if there's any encouragement to get her before the grand jury, she just gave us that encouragement.
Yeah, it seems like the benefit through the years, though, Jennifer Brand, has been that she ends up winning the custody battle because of the murder.
Yeah, and I think she gets money from the state for each of her children, too, because of his death. So I think she's benefiting in more than in one way. And yeah, she's been able to raise these children. She changed their last names. She's denied access, you know, to the grandparents, Dan Markel's parents. So she's been able to kind of do what she wants, have no accountability to really anybody. And so she just goes on with her life. Her whole family now, or her mother and her brother are now in jail, and will be probably for life. And she goes on and lives her life and is raising her children. And yeah, I think some of her testimony was disturbing to hear, you know, how things are proceeding. And it doesn't seem like she has a lot of remorse. It was a bitter divorce for sure. But even people that go through bitter divorce, they do recognize, you know, if their spouse is killed, especially in this way, you know, for the sake of their children, they may feel some remorse and want to have connections with the other family for sure.
Yeah, she moved from Florida after Florida changed the law and gave grandparents some rights down in Florida. I don't know if it's a coincidence, I don't know, but I just know it's a fact. Al, if in fact she's indicted, if in fact she goes to trial, how much of her reaction to this death becomes important for the jury in evaluating her?
Well, I think it is important. I think it is important for them to hear that in her voice there was no sadness. There was nothing in there that demonstrated any regret. It was the topic of a little ditty she wrote, and you know, it starts off with like, well, what do I call him, my latex husband? And it just, to me, was just tasteless. So I think that comes in. And it's going to show that there was no remorse on this. And if she had been, you know, with the point that anyone who was involved in this should be prosecuted, and that's the way she feels, then why wasn't she sad? Why wasn't her heart broken that now her two children, and it was, she said that she always thought he was going to be a great father and everything else. She had no true love for him, but she wanted him to be a great father. It didn't sound that way in that story she wrote.
Think Tank staying with us. When we come back, new details in the tragic death of a 10-year-old girl named Rebecca Baptiste who was tortured.
Shop.
And she's been running away for the last, 3 or 4 weeks since we've been here.
Okay.
She ran away this morning. We went out and tried to find her, and our neighbor found her. Like she was just breathing on her own.
Breathing on her own?
But that was about it. And then as we were driving this way, started seeing color change in her lips, and we were just hauling it.
Walk me through what happened today.
We were outside starting the morning. Before I can get waters in the bottles, she went running off again.
Okay, you saw her run off?
No, she disappears. We have them play in the yard, and she was supposed to go stand in the shade and go wait for me, because that's where we've been keeping her, to be outside, because she can't be trusted in the building, because she gets there. There's knives, there's weapons, there's everything.
Okay.
So I had her standing outside. I turned around to go grab waters for bottles, and she was gone.
This one's going to make your blood boil if you're not familiar with the story. But what you just heard there, Richard Baptiste and Anicia Woods. This is the father and girlfriend of a little 10-year-old girl named Rebecca. And there they are, speaking to investigators and blaming this 10-year-old for everything that happens to her is her fault. She's running away. She doesn't listen. Well, I think now we know why this little girl was running away. You're going to hear some details that came out in court about exactly what happened to this little girl who's dead now. Those two are charged with murder. But what exactly was going on in her life? What would make this 10-year-old girl apparently attempt to get away from home, get away from her father, and get away from his girlfriend? Again, I'm warning you about these details. As you listen to this, they'll refer to Rebecca as RB. But these details are horrific, and you're talking about a 10-year-old little girl. Let's watch.
What happened to RB after being on the side of the road? Where did she go?
She went to LCMC, the hospital in Winslow.
What is LCMC?
Little Colorado Medical Center.
And do you know how she got there?
Via ambulance.
And so when once she got to LCMC, did you receive sort of some first impressions from Sergeant Arona?
Yes, I did.
And did you document those in your initial report on from July 27th?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the court the information that you received that day about RB?
Sergeant Arona had contacted me and told me that she had bruises from head to toe. There was injuries to her vaginal and her anus area. She had damaged missing toenails and burn marks on her back that appeared to be consistent with cigarette burns.
What was the information that was provided by Little Colorado to Apache County specific to her dehydration?
That she was so severely dehydrated that she would not be able to walk on her own power.
And then in terms of her head, what was the initial information provided?
She was missing large chunks of hair from her head, so the doctor had mentioned a possible significant brain injury.
And then, so in terms of throughout the investigation, did that come to fruition? There's in the medical records?
Yes.
How about, and you just talked about the top of her head, how about her face? What was described from her face?
Her lips were very dry and chapped. She had a bruise on her left eye.
Can you tell us more about what the injuries were noted on her arms?
So both of her arms were bruised. There was large abrasions starting from her bicep, traveling all the way down to her hands.
And how about the midsection?
There was large abrasions on her midsection that went horizontally from her midsection to her back.
But were you provided initial findings by the doctor?
Yes, I was.
And who was the doctor?
Dr. Graziano.
And so based on the initial findings from Dr. Graziano from the autopsy you attended, can you describe what the findings were?
Yes, Dr. Graziano stated her preliminary findings were consistent with the doctors at Phoenix Children's Hospital for child abuse, child sexual abuse, and torture.
Additional findings she was able to determine based on her review of RB's body in the autopsy.
Yes, there was.
What was that?
Dr. Graziano had stated there was obvious signs of tearing in both the vaginal area and the anus.
10 years old. 10 years old. She tried to save herself. She tried so desperately to flee her home, to get away from the people who were supposed to be protecting her. It's amazing that she could smile in any picture. Let's bring back in our think tank. Al Wunsch III, Darnell Crossland, Jennifer Brandt. Jennifer, this is evil, but amazingly, here they are, blaming her for everything. It's her fault. She runs away. She doesn't listen. You got to keep her away from there's knives there. We got to keep her away. She's always trying to get away. Of course she's trying to get away.
Yeah, who wouldn't? It's horrible. We hear these stories over and over again. And, we also think about where was the protective services? They were alerted a number of times. Why weren't they in there taking this child away from these people? It's so horrific when you hear this over and over. The cases get to this point that people are so evil, abusing their own children. This was her own father who obviously abused her, sexually abused her. It's disgusting. And no one was able to save her. No one was able to step in. She tried to run away a couple of times and just couldn't get away from them. And that's what's really horrible about it. She was trying to save herself, and it was just impossible.
I want to play a little bit more from the deputy who testified, because you heard the girlfriend talk about this escape attempt from the second floor. Take a listen.
In terms of your investigation with RB, was there information about her trying to run away?
Yes.
And did that occur more than one time?
Yes, it did.
And in terms of just maybe the last year or so, through the investigation, were you able to determine that there was law enforcement involved when she was in Phoenix and she ran away?
Yes. RB had jumped out of a 2-story window of an apartment complex. She had ran to at least one homeless person that she saw asking for help and then ran to the QT.
And when she ran, can you describe what the QT is for those who may not know?
The Quick Trip convenience store.
And so when she ran to the QT convenience store, did she provide any information?
Yes, she had told the manager that she was being abused by her stepmother, and so he called the police. She was transported to Phoenix Children's Hospital because of the visible bruising, and she had told the officers that she had to do planks and run laps, as well as being hit on top of her hands and feet with a brush.
Was she asked anything at all about her siblings?
Yes.
And what information did she provide about her siblings?
She stated that they all were punished, but she got it more frequently and the worst.
How does this happen? Darnell, she escaped. She got out. She got to QT. She got to help. Law enforcement is called. I'm sure Family Services is involved next, yet still it's not enough to save her?
This one's hard. You always do, at the end of the show, things we need to know and highlight the fact that there's missing children and children that need help. And I find myself in this case just really hard to listen to this. And I usually don't connect with cops, but this guy is sitting on the stand and he's rubbing his eye, wiping his eye. He's clearly emotionally moved. And I connect with this brother. It must be so hard for him to do this case. It's hard for us to listen to it. And I can tell his voice sounds like he's emotionally moved and disturbed by this. So he clearly seems to be very human and one of the good cops out there. And I applaud him for the work that he's doing here. But in terms of what we're seeing with these abuse cases is there's a weirdness. The father is one thing, but then when the mother stands by and rubs his back and consoles him, it's almost like they're both mentally insane. And it's not just one, it's always two. We've seen several cases we've done where the both of them are like, it's okay, honey. And they just detach from these children. I don't know what's happening with this.
Yeah, she's not the biological mother. She stepped into and claimed to sort of be the mother figure in little Rebecca's life. Al, how do you think this will play out? We're looking at the two defendants here. Is one of them going to try to get a deal, or can prosecutors just sit back and say, no deals here? Let's just go after both of them. We've got the evidence. No one's going to, at the end of the day, after they hear evidence like this, let these people go.
Yeah, this is a horror movie. This is a horror movie where the one person escapes and then is just brought back to the nightmare. And there's no way, as a former prosecutor, I would allow either one of those the opportunity to try to get a lesser sentence by ratting on the other. There's just no way that that's going to happen. And I don't think that, you talk about there was an hour on Donna. I mean, this jury will be coming back, and they may not even have to leave the jury box and deliberate. Just do a show of hands right there and just say absolutely terribly guilty. And justice for this poor little, I mean, how is she able to smile? I mean, that tells you how incredible this child was, that she could smile in all of that pain. And no one took the time and no one took the opportunity to save her. And it just really, really hurts very deeply to see a case like this.
Yeah, well, the mandatory reporters tried. At school, they tried. The QT manager tried, and it was unsuccessful here. The other thing, Jennifer, is how brave this girl was to jump out of the window, to save herself, to save her siblings. And I can't imagine what's going through her mind when they brought her back to that torture house.
I know. I mean, that's even a sadder part of the case, is that she tried to help herself. And you hear about many of these cases, kids are tied up, they're not able to get out. She was able to get out of the house and jumped from a 2-story window. I mean, most kids wouldn't do that.
We are out of time. Jennifer Brandt, Al Wunsch, Darnell Crossland, thank you all so much. We'll see you again next week. In the meantime, when we come back, something else you need to know, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, the tragic Mother's Day murder of mother of 2, Suzanne Morphew. Was the affair a motive? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
Time to reveal something else you need to know. Let's take a look at the big board. Murder or suicide? That is the question for the jury in the case that you're watching on Court TV, Wisconsin versus Samantha Krebs, charged with first-degree intentional homicide after allegedly stabbing her boyfriend in the chest. But what happened was she instructed a witness, apparently, to tell police that he killed himself. I want you to take a listen to that and then listen to what the medical examiner had to say.
Walked into the apartment. Joy was laying on the linoleum in the kitchen. She looked at me dead in the eye. She said, "Just tell the police he stabbed himself."
What did you determine the cause of death to be?
A stab wound to the chest.
So in this particular situation, are you able to determine whether or not it was self-inflicted or not self-inflicted?
No, from my involvement in this case, I can tell you the cause of death, but I am not able to tell you the manner of death.
That's a problem for prosecutors. That's a problem for prosecutors. Medical examiner can't tell you it's a homicide or a suicide. Trial continues on Court TV. Make sure you tune in. Right now, though, I need you to take a look at your television screen. We have a missing child who needs your help. Kaylee Trawick, missing since September 5th out of Jasper, Alabama, just 15 years old. If you see Kaylee, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference. 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Jasper Police Department in Alabama. That number's on your screen right now. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.